Colorado, Big 12 title contender, the phrase that no one wants to say out loud, and you don't have to yet. At least not in my view. That's JT Wistrcill, Locked On Utes, joining me here on the show. Look, I didn't think Colorado would win the game. I thought being a 2-touchdown dog or anything over 10 was pretty absurd, even going to Orlando against UCF. But so far, JT, Colorado looks roughly like the team I thought they'd be. Now, this was an impressive win. To me, this said more about UCF than it did about Colorado, because I don't think UCF is pushing to be a Big 12 title contender this year. It's a great win for the Buffs. I think it pushes them towards being a 7-8 win team rather than a 5-6 win team, and I thought they'd be 6 before the year. They might still end up there because they have a really tough schedule ahead. That's another reason I'm like, I don't know about the whole Big 12 conference title thing. What do you make of the Buffs after their big win against the Knights?
Incredibly impressed. This was the biggest win of Coach Prime's career so far, in my opinion, as a head coach. When you look at
TCU game 1.
Maybe, but we also saw what that TCU team ended up looking like at the end of the year, and we'll see on UCF. But I still think that after the Baylor game, there were a lot of people like, okay, is this team? I thought that was a huge test yesterday, and I thought they absolutely passed it. And look, here's the thing about Colorado. People don't like them because of all this stuff outside of football. I understand that. But at the end of the day, you have to respect what Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter continue to do week in and week out. Travis Hunter is arguably the best player in the sport. I would probably argue right now he is the best player in the sport for what he does on both sides of the ball. And Shedeur is simply, I still think, right, if the NFL draft was today, he's the first overall pick. I saw before the season started, you see people on Twitter being like, why is Shedeur that good? Like, is it just because of his dad? It's like, no, watch what he does week in and week out. Spencer, you and I talked about last year, 27-3, the touchdown to interception ratio. And we see again in a big game against Baylor, the throws and the plays he makes. Now, Baylor, I also think has to make plays last week, right? But still, Shedeur, the one to step up and make the plays, just like yesterday. When you have those two players, you have a chance. I'm not going to go contender quite yet. I still need to see more from their offensive line and from them consistently. That Nebraska game was not too long ago, but incredibly impressed yesterday when the entire world was pretty much counting them out. A big noon kickoff was there. UCF, it was their world. This was their moment, and it was Coach Prime's moment instead.
Yeah, it's a disappointing game for UCF because if they win that game, I think a lot of people do look at them as, hey, dark horse Big 12 title contender, and that's how I viewed them before the year. I didn't think they'd get to that particular level, but I need to see Colorado do it against somebody at the top before I'll go, oh, okay, yeah, they're at the top. But, hey, they haven't lost a Big 12 game yet. We'll ignore the fact that they needed a Hail Mary to beat Baylor at home just a couple weeks ago. But good football teams, they get better throughout the year. And you can't deny Colorado's a better team from a year ago, and they are better than they were in week 1. I think both those things are plainly obvious. I'm sure people will disagree with it anyway. One call in the Big 12 that I hit right on the head. Oh, before we go any further, BYU fans, I apologize. I did not believe. I did not understand. I did not buy in after the Kansas State win. I thought it was fluky. I still think it was kind of fluky, but I thought you'd lose to Baylor, and you went and beat Baylor. BYU's 5-0 for the first time since 2021. I kind of put them in the Colorado camp. Like, I keep picking against them, but I'm still in the, I don't know. I can't get there to where I put them at the top of the conference right now, but we'll talk about that more a bit later. Kansas State, though, I think has been there since before the year. I never bought into Oklahoma State, never thought they were a legit title contender. They are not going to make the Big 12 championship game after getting housed by Kansas State. Kansas State came out, and this is why I like this game from the Wildcats. I know they were at home, and they need to show they can do it on the road. That's a fair criticism of Kansas State right now, but just about the only one. They did not play well for a half. Avery Johnson turned the ball over. Oklahoma State was hanging around, and then you look up, and they beat them 42-20 at the end of the day. I was really impressed with Kansas State.
I was as well. I totally agree with you on both points. Really quick on BYU, just because I am the Locked On Utes guy. I am incredibly impressed with what the Cougars are doing as well. They surpassed my expectations, and the Cougars are already all fired up about that game, obviously, in Salt Lake City in a few weeks, and it looks a little different after how Utah looked yesterday. But shifting the focus back to Kansas State, look, I agree. That was a bad night in Provo. Things got away from them. All the special teams plays we saw, the craziness that happened. I think that was just one of those games for Kansas State, and it's incredibly tough to win at Kansas State. Yet again, they proved that. I think Oklahoma State is still going to be a solid team in the Big 12. I don't think they were week in and week out, they're not going to get blown out by 20, but this just shows you the difference between a contender and a team that's in the middle. And Kansas State is clearly a contender in this conference. Oklahoma State is an offensive line problem. And I know that Ollie Gordon, his numbers were better yesterday, but you saw against an elite run defense in Utah last week that he could not get going the first few weeks of the season. He's their best player, and he's not able to get it going because of what teams are doing. Not even loading the box, I should say. That's also where the offensive line has to execute. And when the game falls on Alan Bowman's shoulders against elite teams, that's where it crumbles. That's why this team last year got blown out by UCF, got blown out by South Alabama, right? Like Alan Bowman, he can be awesome one moment and not so awesome the next. So this team has issues. The defense also not that impressive, right? Back-to-back weeks where you're like, well, Utah didn't score that many on them, but like, look at what Arizona's defense made Isaac Wilson, Utah's backup quarterback. They shut him down for much of the game yesterday versus Wilson made the plays he needed to make against a lesser defense, Oklahoma State. I wasn't a huge believer in Oklahoma State because of a lot of things that we saw as well before the year, Spencer, and I think they've only proven that, and I am still very high on Kansas State. Still a top 3 team in this conference for sure, if not maybe the best. Maybe Iowa State right now, but Kansas State probably next.
Here's why this conference title race is so hard to feel. I'd put BYU and Colorado in the same camp as Texas Tech. I like what I've seen so far. I just don't know if I'm ready to make the jump. Somehow Iowa State gets overlooked on this show. The Cyclones do not look half bad, but Utah is the best team in this conference. Except they're not. Okay, they're not. And I think what we saw over the weekend reminded everyone you need Cam Rising, and it is Lucy with the football, man. I'm gonna play. Pull it away. No, okay, go back. Charlie, go back. I'm not gonna pull it again. I mean, come on. It's a game time decision, but like he's gonna play. All right, come on, Charlie. Kick the ball. Oh, Charlie falls on his butt yet again. Is this the most infuriating time to be a Utah fan where you look around going, we are better than these teams, but not without a starting quarterback?
I still think last year reached more inferior levels just because it went on for longer, right? This is only week 2. But I will say, I feel like a lot of Utah fans, because of all their pent-up frustration from last year, this feels even worse. I agree, Spencer. A healthy Cam Rising, I do think Utah is the best team in this conference still. People could look and say, well, you give 23 to Arizona. Well, Arizona looked a lot different yesterday than they did against Kansas State and even in the first few weeks of the season. And the truth is, what's the best way to beat Utah? You need a quarterback who can make NFL throws. Noah Fafita made some incredible throws in that game. The last drive, the 2 throws he made late, were some of the best I've ever seen a quarterback make inside Rice-Eccles Stadium. And that's Caleb Williams played at Utah a few years ago, right? Bo Nix was there last year. For those throws in particular, that's how good Noah Fafita was. So you look at, they made enough plays, but this comes down to the Utah offense yesterday. I mean, you have 3 drives where you get inside the 15 and you come away with 3 points. The first 2 drives in particular, you get no points. Back-to-back times, you end on downs. Like, it's gross. Disgusting. And not you good. See that this Utah team, they, in the second half, because of their lack of just the success early on, they felt like they had to throw the ball more. Isaac Wilson shows his inaccuracies. I thought the play calling by Andy Ludwig wasn't great. And I also got to say, those Arizona defensive backs, I mean, there was also plays where there's more people open. And that's where you give a credit for them winning on the outside. Not Utah. Dorian Singer played very well, but there were other times where it's like, wow, Dorian Singer is well covered here. So give a lot of credit to Arizona for their big performance. I believe a fully healthy Utah team is the best in this conference, but here's also the problem. When Cam Rising comes back, once again, he still has to ramp up.
Don't say when. Don't say when. I'm not ever saying when he comes back. I'm saying if he comes back.
I'm with you. If he comes back, because I've never heard of a situation like this. I've talked with a few people just around college football. Spencer, you're another example. Like, have you ever seen a quarterback situation like this?
No.
2 years in a row where we're doing this, and Witt can say he was a
week after week after week after week after week. I mean, Utes fans have just got to be tearing their hair out right now in every sense of the term. I'm going to give you 10 seconds for this final question here.
Okay.
Who would you say is the current favorite to win the Big 12 in your view? Not in the betting markets, but if you had to pick one team to win the Big 12 right now, who are you picking?
Okay, I still would say Utah very biasly, but I will also say
some hard bias.
Through the first few weeks, Iowa State, I think, deserves the nod with Kansas State right there.
I think that's a pretty good answer. I think I don't know if there's a better answer out there. It's just any answer can be good. You know, people say, well, what do you think about this? Like, your guess probably as good as mine, because this is a crapshoot.